My alcoholic brother spent 10 years wasting his life partying, while I turned our dad's struggling company into a $100 million empire. Then at the shareholders meeting, he blindsided me, had me fired, and completely humiliated. I didn't say a word and walked away quietly. But on Monday morning, when he stepped into his new CEO office, my brother, an alcoholic, partied for a decade while I built Dad's failing company into a $100 million empire. Then, at the shareholders meeting, he got me fired and humiliated. I left quietly, but the next Monday, when he walked into his new CEO office, well, I'm Michael Foster, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the greatest wins. You see, in business, just like in family, the person you trust most can be the one plotting your downfall. But they often forget to look down before they push you off the edge. Let me take you back to the start. Foster Technologies wasn't always a $100 million company. 15 years ago, it was just a struggling IT consulting firm my dad started from scratch. Dad was a tech whiz but terrible with business. By 2010, we were 3 months from bankruptcy, and Dad's health was failing under the pressure. I was 25, fresh out of business school, while my older brother James was 30 and a regular in the local nightlife. Dad always favored James, the charming firstborn who could talk his way out of anything. But charm doesn't pay the bills, and James's partying had already cost the company major clients. I still remember that rainy Tuesday when I found Dad slumped over his desk, tears in his eyes, looking at our latest financial reports. "It's over, Michael," he whispered, his voice broken. "Everything I built. I'm going to lose it all." Something inside me snapped that day. I couldn't watch Dad's dream die, even if he'd always seen me as second best. While James was out spending company money at fancy clubs, I started working 18-hour days. I learned every part of the business, met with every client, reviewed every contract. Mom worried about me. "Michael, you need to rest," she'd say, bringing dinner to my office at midnight. "You can't save the company alone." But that's exactly what I did. That 1 year was brutal. I restructured our debt, cut unnecessary costs, including James's entertainment budget, and personally visited every major client we'd lost. Many slammed the door in my face, but I kept coming back. Persistence pays off. By the end of that year, we were breaking even. James found it hilarious. "Look at little Mikey playing businessman," he'd mock whenever he bothered to show up. "Dad's still going to put me in charge, you know. I'm the oldest." I ignored him and focused on work. Over the next 5 years, I transformed Foster Technologies from a simple IT consulting firm into a full-service digital transformation company. We developed our own software, expanded into cloud services, and built a reputation for excellence. The company grew fast. From $2 million in revenue, we hit $10 million, then $50 million, and finally crossed $100 million last year. Our staff grew from 20 to over 500. We opened offices in 3 countries. Dad's health improved as the company thrived, but his favoritism didn't change. Every success was somehow credited to James's leadership, even though he spent most of his time planning his next vacation. At dinners, Dad would praise James's business sense while I quietly looked over quarterly reports on my phone. I didn't care about the credit, I cared about the company, our employees, and the legacy we were building. Besides, I had my own plans. What nobody knew, not even Dad, was that I'd been carefully documenting everything for years. Every decision James messed up, every client he lost, every dollar he wasted. More importantly, I'd been quietly building relationships with our key clients, making myself essential to their operations. I also had another secret, one that would be crucial during the company's near bankruptcy. I used my own savings and took out personal loans to keep us afloat. In return, I got shares, lots of shares. The paperwork was buried, but I legally owned 40% of Foster Technologies. Or at least, I thought that would be enough to protect me. I couldn't have been more wrong. Last month, everything changed. Dad announced his retirement, and everyone expected him to name me as his successor. After all, I'd effectively been running the company for years. Even James had been showing up to work more often, probably sensing the shift. The shareholders' meeting was set for Friday afternoon. All major stakeholders were there. I prepared a detailed presentation about our growth strategy for the next 5 years. Dad stood up to make his announcement. I noticed James smirking, but I didn't think much of it. Ladies and gentlemen, Dad began, as you know, I'm retiring as CEO of Foster Technologies. This company has been my life's work, and choosing my successor wasn't easy. He paused, looking around the room. But there's only one person who truly embodies the leadership qualities needed to take Foster Technologies to the next level, someone who understands our family values and has the vision to lead us into the future. I sat up straighter, ready to accept the responsibility I'd been preparing for. My son, James Foster, will be taking over as CEO, effective immediately. The room went silent. I felt like I'd been punched. But Dad wasn't finished. Furthermore, James has brought to my attention some concerning irregularities in our recent operations. It seems that certain individuals have been making unauthorized decisions and potentially compromising our company's integrity. James stood up, holding a folder. I'm afraid my brother Michael has been operating outside his authority, making promises to clients we can't keep and potentially engaging in unethical practices. I couldn't believe it. Every accusation was a twisted version of the truth. The very decisions that had saved and grown the company were being presented as reckless and unauthorized. Therefore, Dad continued, as my final act as CEO, I'm terminating Michael's employment with Foster Technologies, effective immediately. The security guards were already approaching my chair. James's voice dripped with fake sympathy. I'm sorry it had to end this way, little brother. But hey, maybe now you can get a life outside the office. The room buzzed as I was escorted out, my keycard deactivated, my access revoked. I saw pity in some faces, satisfaction in others. But they had no idea what was coming. Because while James was plotting my downfall, he'd forgotten 3 crucial things. First, those unauthorized decisions were all properly documented and approved. Second, my 40% ownership wasn't as hidden as they thought. And third, well, let's just say that when you spend 10 years building a company's technology, you learn where all the secrets are buried. Sometimes literally. As I walked to my car that evening, I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to an old friend at the SEC. Then I went home and waited. Monday morning was going to be very, very interesting. Monday morning arrived with a thunderstorm, fitting weather for what was about to happen. I sat in my home office, watching the clock tick towards 9 a.m., when James would swagger into his new CEO office for the first time. The weekend had been interesting. Mom had called 17 times, leaving tearful voicemails about family unity. Dad hadn't called at all. James had been too busy celebrating at his favorite clubs. The photos were all over social media, including some questionable ones with the company credit card clearly visible on the table. I smiled, remembering how James always thought technology was beneath him. That's geek stuff, he'd say, refusing to learn even basic cybersecurity. Well, that arrogance was about to cost him dearly. At exactly 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, my loyal executive assistant who James hadn't bothered to fire, probably because he thought she just brought coffee. It's starting, her message read. I opened my laptop and connected to Foster Technologies' internal security feed. Yes, I still had access. When you build a system from the ground up, you always leave yourself a backdoor. The camera in the CEO's office showed James walking in, coffee in hand, ready to begin his reign. He sat in the leather chair, my chair, and pressed the power button on his computer. That's when the show began. Instead of the Windows login screen, a video started playing. It was security footage from years ago, showing James in his office making a deal with our biggest competitor to sell them our client data. The audio was crystal clear. Of course, I can get you their information, James's voice rang out. My idiot brother does all the work anyway. Just make sure the payment goes to my Cayman account. James frantically tried to turn off the monitor, but nothing worked. The video kept playing on every screen in his office. But that was just the beginning. His phone buzzed. The SEC had received an anonymous tip about insider trading, complete with documented evidence of James's illegal activities over the past decade. His private email started pinging with notifications. Somehow, all his confidential communications had been leaked to the board members. Down in the lobby, federal agents were walking through the front door. I watched through the security feed as James's face turned from confusion to panic. He tried calling Dad, but Dad's phone was busy, probably because he was getting his own set of revelations about his beloved firstborn's activities. At that moment, Sarah walked into James's office. Mr. Foster, she said calmly, the board members are requesting an emergency meeting. Also, there are some federal agents here to see you. James started sweating. Tell them I'm busy. Cancel everything and get someone up here to fix these damn computers. Sarah smiled politely. I'm afraid that won't be possible. You see, the entire IT department just resigned. They sent a company-wide email explaining why. Something about loyalty to the person who actually built this company. They can't do that. We have contracts. James sputtered. Sarah placed a folder on his desk. Actually, they can. Their contracts were with a subsidiary company that holds all their intellectual property rights. A company that, as of this morning, is no longer affiliated with Foster Technologies. James's hands shook as he opened the folder. Inside was a simple document showing the ownership structure of Foster Innovation Labs, the subsidiary I quietly created years ago, the company that actually owned all our patents, software, and client contracts. And I owned 100% of it. But the clients, James stammered, have already been informed of the change in management. Most have already signed new contracts directly with Foster Innovation Labs. It seems they prefer working with the person who actually handled their accounts all these years. The color drained from James's face as he finally understood. Every piece of technology that made Foster Technologies valuable, every client relationship that kept it profitable, every key employee who made it run, they were all loyal to me. He'd stolen an empty shell. The office door opened again. 2 FBI agents walked in, followed by Mr. Patterson, our chief legal counsel. James Foster, one agent said, we need to ask you some questions about certain financial transactions. You can't do this. James shouted, looking wildly around. I'm the CEO. I'm in charge here. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. Actually, about that. He pulled out another document. The board just concluded an emergency meeting. Given the circumstances, they voted to remove you as CEO, effective immediately. They can't do that. I own shares in Foster Technologies. James protested. Mr. Patterson corrected him. A company that, as of 9 o'clock this morning, has no intellectual property, no major clients, and no core development team. I believe the stock price reflects that reality. James lunged for his computer, probably to check the stock ticker, but of course, his screen was still playing videos of his various illegal activities over the years. As James was escorted out of the building by federal agents, his designer suit wrinkled and his face ashen, I sent one final company-wide email from my remote access to all remaining Foster Technologies employees. You have a choice: stay with a sinking ship, or join us at Foster Innovation Labs, where innovation and integrity actually mean something. Your jobs are secure, your benefits will be better, and most importantly, your hard work will be respected. Within an hour, 90% of the staff had accepted the offer. But my revenge wasn't complete yet. There was still the matter of dear old Dad's retirement fund. The fallout was spectacular. Within 24 hours, Foster Technology stock had plummeted 70%. News of James's arrest made headlines in every major business publication. Tech CEO arrested on multiple fraud charges, Foster Technologies in freefall as scandal erupts. 3 days after James's arrest, I sat in my new office at Foster Innovation Labs headquarters, a modern building I secretly purchased 6 months ago. Sarah walked in with a familiar face, Dad's financial advisor, Mr. Goldman. "He's been calling nonstop," Mr. Goldman said, looking uncomfortable, "ever since he realized that his retirement fund is worthless. I finished for him, because he invested everything in Foster Technology stock." Dad had always bragged about having skin in the game, keeping his entire retirement portfolio in company shares. It was poor financial planning, but he'd never listened to advice about diversification. Now those shares were worth pennies. "Your father is desperate," Mr. Goldman continued. "Mrs. Foster, your mother, she's worried they might lose the house." I leaned back in my chair, thinking about all the times Dad had dismissed my warnings about James's behavior, all the times he'd attributed my success to luck rather than hard work. "Set up a meeting," I finally said. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., here." The next morning, my parents arrived at Foster Innovation Labs. Mom looked like she'd been crying, Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week. They sat across from me in the visitor chairs, the same kind Dad used to make me sit in while he lectured me about real leadership. "Son," Dad began, his voice shaking, "I know I made mistakes, terrible mistakes." I interrupted quietly. "You let James destroy evidence of his crimes. You helped him embezzle company funds. You were complicit in fraud that hurt our employees, our clients, and our shareholders." "I didn't know." He tried to protest. "You knew, I cut him off. You just didn't care because James was your golden boy, and I was just the backup plan." Mom started crying softly. I handed her a tissue. "But that's not why you're here," I continued. "You're here because you're broke, because the company shares that were supposed to fund your retirement are worthless." Dad slumped in his chair. "Michael, please, we're family." "Family?" I smiled without humor. Was I family when you let James take credit for my work? Was I family when you fired me in front of the entire company? I pulled out a folder. I learned that dramatic revelations are more effective with proper documentation. Here's what's going to happen. Foster Innovation Labs will buy back your shares in Foster Technologies at their original purchase price. Their eyes widened with hope. "But," I continued, "there are conditions. First, you both sign a non-disclosure agreement about James's activities. Second, you retire quietly to that house in Florida you always talked about. Third, you stay out of my business completely. You'd do that for us?" Mom whispered. "Not for you," I corrected. "For the scared 12-year-old boy who used to believe his father hung the moon. He deserved better than what you gave him." Dad started to speak, but I held up my hand. "One more thing. The money comes with a trustee, someone who makes sure you don't gamble it away on another one of James's schemes. Monthly allowance, investment restrictions, the whole package. You don't trust us?" Dad said, softly. "You taught me that lesson very well." They signed the papers. A security guard escorted them out. Dad turned back one last time. "I was wrong about you, son. You're a better businessman than I ever was." "No, Dad," I replied, "I'm just better at remembering who my real enemies are." 5 years have passed since then. Foster Innovation Labs is now a $1 billion company known for its cutting-edge technology and ethical business practices. James served 2 years in prison and now works as a bartender in Vegas. Dad and Mom live quietly in Florida, sending occasional postcards that I never answer. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at my old business school. The topic, the importance of integrity in family business. I accepted with a smile. After all, I have quite a story to tell. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's building something so successful that they have to live with the knowledge that they bet on the wrong horse. And as for those who wonder how the quiet one, the careful one, the backup plan pulled off such a complete victory? Well, let's just say that while the peacocks are busy showing off their feathers, the eagles are watching, waiting, and planning their next move. Because in business, just like in life, it's not about who starts at the top, it's about who's still standing when the dust settles.